Su puto es Joaquín. Su puto Dios. Su puto Dios Núñez. Su puto Dios.
Press any button. Story. Play the main. No return. Making of. The story. No return. Option. Extras. Making of. Extra. Option. No return. Story. Play the new game plot. New game. Load game. Chap. Load. Current autosave. Autosave. Load game. Story. No story. Play the main story of The Last of Us Part 2. New game. New game. Load. Chap. In cap cinematics. In cap in story. No return. New run. Standard run. Moderate. Provide light. Ellie. Inventory. You have selected. There.
I should get moving.
Jackson. Status. Available. Encounter type. Calm assault. Clear each wave. Wave incoming. 20 seconds. Option. Chat photo mode. Chat option. Chat photo extra. Filter gallery. Gameplay. None. Headache. Game mirror world. Cost. 50. Mirror on. Bullet speed. On. Infinite. On. On. Infinite listen mode range. Off. Enables infinite listen mode. Game extras. X button. Select. Semi-auto pistol. Brick. Health. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol left. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Equipped. 5. Ammo loaded. Infinite reserve. Assault wave incoming. Wave 1 of 3. Enemies alive. 3. Sprinting is loud and may reveal your position to enemies. Crafting. Molotov. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Molotov. 1. Craftable. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. 2. Ammo loaded. Infinite reserve. Use listen mode. Hold R1 button to locate the supply cache between waves. Wave 2 of 3. Enemies alive. 3. Wave completed. Next wave in. 20. Set crafting. Molotov.
Okay. Breathe.
Su puto enfermero. Su puto Joaquín. Su puto Dios.
Wave 3 of 3. Enemies alive. 3.
There she is! Over here!
Encounter complete. Returning to hideout. 15 seconds. Semi-auto pistol. Semi-auto pistol. Brick. Craft Molotov. Craftable. Recipe requires alcohol and rag. You have alcohol. Encounter complete. Jackson. Assault. Total score 300. Assault. Jackson. Rank B. Score 300.
Yes. that's the point. Nintendo Land is amazing. Since the Wii U gamepad actually
Use touchpad swipe down to change between navigation assistance goals in no return.
As a fifth player. Mario Bros. U on the Wii U, for example, had the so-called boost mode, where 5 people could help or hinder the other players. In the deluxe version on the Switch, though, this feature, of course, got removed. Besides that, though, some other Wii U games also supported 5-player, such as Mario Party 10 and, you guessed it, Nintendo Land. The Wii U's internet browser was amazing, especially in combination with the gamepad. It was really easy to use and had a lot of nice and useful features, like hiding the screen on TV to not show anything private. Instead of the internet browser, though, the Switch only has apps for certain sites.
Puto Dios Núñez, su puto Dios. Su puto Dios.
I honestly don't know why the Switch doesn't provide a built-in internet browser, as most Nintendo predecessor consoles actually had one. Alright guys, now let's get to the, in my opinion, biggest and most underrated advantage of the Wii U, the dual screen. Since on the Wii U, you could simultaneously play on the TV and the gamepad itself actually functioned as a second screen, which brought some awesome benefits and made a lot of Wii U games actually profit from its existence. Just as a quick example, in Mario 3D World, some stages required the gamepad to proceed, and as the Switch doesn't support dual screen, Nintendo found the most awkward and inconvenient ways around this in the Switch version. And this is by far not the only example. I have dedicated a separate video to this topic, so if you'd like to see more examples of the benefits of the Wii U dual screen, feel free to check that one out.
Options.
So, there you have it. 30 things the Wii
X
U did
button.
better than the
Select.
Switch. Thanks
Circle
for watching
button.
and see you
Back.
at the next time. Bye bye. Same, with the only difference being that on the Switch you have to pay for it.
Ay,
This
verdad.
is one of the 30 things I think the Wii U did or still does better than the Switch, and there are probably some things among them that you most likely haven't even thought of yet. So, stay tuned. Yo, what's up everyone? I'm Zaidu and I highly welcome you to this video. I just quickly want to point out that these following things are not listed in a specific order. However, I would still recommend you to stay until the end of this video, as the final point is the most important and in my opinion the most underappreciated one. But now, let's continue with number 2. The Switch home menu is disappointing. It's empty, it has no music, it's just our games listed next to each other. Sure, that's kind of what a home menu is for, though I think the Switch menu isn't any interesting or outstanding at all, and the Wii U does this 100 times better. Already when entering the Wii U home menu, you'll be greeted by some nice music and some Mii's waving at you, and that alone makes the Wii U
X
menu
button.
so much more
Select.
engaging.
Circle button.
On top
Back.
of that, to me it seems like the Wii U home menu was really made for the players. The Wii U home menu had this thing that it congratulated you on your birthday, and the Mii's on the menu were kinda celebrating to a cute birthday song. This is honestly one kind of a feature I'm actually missing on the Switch, as small things like this are what gave the Wii U menu actually a soul and a personality. The Switch menu is not only boring, it can be an actual mess sometimes. By default, the games are always listed in the order in which they were last played, and the only way to sort them is to go to All Software and then decide if they are alphabetical, playtime, or most recent. On the Wii U, though, you can sort the games however you want in the start menu itself and even create folders to make it easier to navigate the menu. Yes,
¿Qué es
both
esto?
do have folders, however, they work differently. What?
X button. Select. Circle button. Back. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. X button, select, circle button, back. X button, select, circle button, back. X button, select, circle button, back.
Let's start off by talking about Joy-Con drift. Almost everybody who owns a Switch has either had or at least heard about Joy-Con drift. It's been a major issue ever since the launch of the Switch. And nearly 4 years later, nothing has been done to resolve this issue. And due to COVID-19, the annual Super Smash Bros. Melee and Ultimate Tournament, the Big House,
X button, select, circle
Due to
button, back.
COVID-19, the annual Super Smash Bros. Melee and Ultimate Tournament, the Big House, had to use online play since they weren't able to gather in real life. However, since Smash Bros. Melee is a 19-year-old game, it doesn't have a built-in online play mode, so they were forced to use Slippy, which is a mod for Melee that adds online play along with a few other features. So all was set up, and the tournament was scheduled to begin sometime in December of 2020. Except, in order to use Slippy, you need to emulate Melee using an ISO file. And as we have come to know, Nintendo doesn't really like emulation, regardless of if it's legal or not. So about 1 month before the tournament was going to begin, Nintendo sent the Big House tournament a cease and desist letter, and they had to cancel the tournament entirely. Something I find especially strange about this whole situation is that Nintendo not only forced them was going to begin, Nintendo sent the Big House tournament a cease and desist letter, and they had to cancel the tournament entirely. Something I find especially strange about this whole situation is that Nintendo not
X
only forced them
button,
to cancel the
select,
Smash Bros.
circle
Melee
button,
part of the
back.
tournament, but they also made them cancel the Smash Bros. Ultimate part of the tournament, even though the Smash Bros. Ultimate part doesn't require any emulation. I can understand Nintendo didn't want people to illegally emulate their games, but the people that would have participated in this tournament are all professional Melee players, meaning that they most likely would have had their own legal copy of the game and ripped the ISO file from their own game, which means that emulating the game would have been perfectly legal and wouldn't cause any harm to Nintendo. The only thing I can think of that could have been bad for Nintendo is that this tournament may have given Slippy some more publicity, meaning that more people would want to pirate Melee to play online. But if that was the intention, then, well, it definitely backfired, since this whole situation got more publicity than the tournament probably would have anyways. This whole situation sparked the hashtag #FreeMelee, which got trending on Twitter for several hours. Several videos on YouTube were made in support for the Melee community, and it resulted in more publicity than if Nintendo just let the tournament happen. But don't worry, the Splatoon
X
community is here
button.
to show their
Select.
support for
Circle
Melee.
button. Back.
What could go wrong? After the Melee incident, Nintendo planned on hosting this tournament for professional Splatoon 2 players. However, a few of the players changed their in-game nicknames to #FreeMelee to show their support for the Melee players who got their event canceled. One day before the tournament was about to go live, Nintendo canceled the event due to players naming themselves FreeMelee. Yet again, this caused even more uproar against Nintendo. The #FreeSplatoon began trending along with FreeMelee, and several people began attacking Nintendo for these actions. In the end, though, I would actually consider this a win for the Splatoon community, since they ended up hosting their own event that had a bigger prize pool. They supported the Melee community.
X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
And they had all of the people that would have participated in Nintendo's tournament. But as of right now, that's where the story of the big house being
X button. Select.
end.
Circle button. Back.
However, unfortunately, that's not where Nintendo stopped doing terrible actions. As I'm sure most of you are aware, in 2019, Etika unfortunately passed away. Only a little bit after Etika committed suicide, someone by the name of Captain Alex had created custom Joy-Con skins known as Etikons to honor Etika. It costed $36,000 of fundraising in order to make them, and all of the profit would be going to a mental health.
X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
Health and suicide prevention charity. And well, Nintendo being Nintendo, sent Alex a cease and desist. Keep in mind, Alex wasn't selling actual Joy-Cons, just skins you can put on your Joy-Con. And other brands have already made custom Joy-Con shells, but Nintendo was fine with those, so then why did Nintendo take down Etikons but not the other custom skins? Well, the Etikons had the phrase Joy-Con boys on them. And since it says the word Joy-Con, Nintendo saw this as copyright infringement and sent
X
a cease and
button.
desist.
Select.
I
Circle
don't see
button.
any
Back.
issue with putting the word Joy-Con on a Joy-Con. It doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. I guess it's copyright infringement now. Alex has been trying to make a new version of the Etikons which doesn't have the word Joy-Con on it. However, it requires a whole new fundraising effort, and it needs to have another factory run. But that's still not the end of everything Nintendo's done. We still have one more thing. After a leak was publicly released in December of 2020, it was revealed in a document that in April of 2013, Nintendo talked to a 3DS hacker known as Namod as he was walking into his home. In this document, they wrote down exactly how to talk to Namod when approaching him at his home, and in order to figure out some of the information about Namod, Nintendo sent spies,
X
or as some
button.
people like to
Select.
call them,
Circle
Nintendo
button.
ninjas,
Back.
to literally spy on him. Based on their findings, they found out where he lives, where he works, what time he works, what days he works, what university he went to, found out that he spends evenings and weekends at home, found that no one entered his home or left his home other than name on himself, and they also said that while they were spying on him, he went to a bank and a restaurant. It's unknown whether Nintendo still does this, but based on how they handle emulation, I would. After the Melee incident, Nintendo planned on hosting this tournament for professional Splatoon 2 players. However, a few of the players changed their in-game nicknames to #FreeMelee to show their support.
Nintendo is arguably the most iconic name in video reason. In 2020, there was a Melee tournament slated to be held in October of that year. That tournament was the Big House. This would have been the 10th annual Big House tournament, and people were pretty excited about it.
X
That
button.
was until,
Select.
the
Circle
world said
button.
no.
Back.
So instead, they organized an online tournament to be held in December of that year. How do they play a GameCube game from 2001 online? Well, they use an emulator, and they used the Slippy mod. Slippy is a completely fan-made mod that allows Melee to be played online with a bunch of quality-of-life changes, like matchmaking systems and rollback netcode. So Korean fans are rapidly starting to dislike their corporate overlords at Nintendo. Nintendo, the once beloved company, is becoming a bit of a pariah in the gaming industry nowadays. And honestly, their reputation's tanking for good reason. In 2020, there was a Melee tournament slated to be held in October of that year. That tournament was the Big House. This would have been the 10th annual Big House tournament, and people were pretty excited about it. That was until, the world said no. So instead, they organized an online tournament to be held in December of that year. How do they play a GameCube game from 2001 online? Well,
X button.
they use an
Select.
emulator, and
Circle
they use the
button.
Slippy
Back.
mod. Slippy is a completely fan-made mod that allows Melee to be played online with a bunch of quality-of-life changes, like matchmaking systems and rollback netcode. So Slippy's netcode is better than Nintendo's netcode for their own service that costs money. This is foreshadowing. So everyone was hyped to play in this online tournament. But on November 19th, 2020, the tournament organizers announced that they had been sent a cease and desist letter by Nintendo of America. Nintendo's reasoning for sending this cease and desist was that the tournament was using illegally copied versions of the game, and they were using the Slippy mod. They were using an emulator. That's what Nintendo didn't like. They were using an emulator to play their game online, which is something that wouldn't be possible without emulation and the Slippy mod that was created by the community. The competitive scene's outcry about this event was enormous, having the #FreeMelee trend on Twitter for what felt like weeks, but it didn't matter. This was not the first time that Nintendo had shut down a Smash tournament.
X button. Select. Circle
Nintendo
button.
didn't
Back.
allow MLG to stream Smash Bros. Brawl back in 2010. Nintendo even tried to shut down the entirety of EVO 2013, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world, just because they were streaming a Smash tournament there. Nintendo has, in 2021, announced that they are directly supporting a Smash Melee tournament in collaboration with Panda Global, which would be the first time in the game's entire life that Nintendo has acknowledged the competitive scene of Melee. But if Nintendo's anti-emulation stance continues, this will not be the last time this happens. And speaking of that stance, by the way, as you can see from Nintendo nuking a Melee tournament just for the use of an emulator, Nintendo has had a very heavy anti-piracy and anti-emulation stance for a long time. And they have shown their hatred for this in the past many times. The main way they show their hatred is lawsuits against websites that host ROMs and emulators of Nintendo's games. But at first glance,
X
this one
button.
makes a lot of
Select.
sense.
Circle
Piracy and
button.
emulation
Back.
could impact Nintendo's bottom line. They will lose profits from people getting these games for free instead of buying them from Nintendo. Well, there's just one issue. Nintendo has no legitimate avenue to buy the overwhelming majority of their retro catalogue of games. They've released some of them, sure, like the Mario 3D All-Stars pack, or the expansion pack for Nintendo Online that gives you, and I quote, a growing library of classic Nintendo 64 and Sega Mega Drive games. But things like this are few and far between, and they don't even host half of the entire catalogue of Nintendo's beloved games that you might want to play. Emulation is extraordinarily important for the preservation of video game history, because if the companies themselves don't sell these games, they just fade into obscurity. The only way to keep them alive is emulation. So if Nintendo doesn't sell the game,
but they also attack emulation, there's no way to play these games. And for the overwhelming majority of games, this is true. There is no legal
X
way to
button.
purchase these
Select.
games from
Circle
Nintendo.
button.
They
Back.
don't sell or manufacture their old consoles or their old games, so unless it's in one of these bundles or you want to buy an overpriced antique on eBay, you're out of luck. In fact, Smash Bros. Melee hasn't been on sale for more than a decade now. But if you emulate the game that they don't sell in order to play the game that they don't sell, offline or online, Nintendo thinks you're a bastard. God forbid you want to host a tournament for that game. There's no doubts in my mind that if Nintendo sold these games, people would buy them. But Nintendo makes no effort to do so. But they will still relentlessly pursue ROM sites and tournaments for no personal gain whatsoever, just out of principle. And speaking of taking legal action for no personal gain just out of principle, Nintendo, up until very recently, has had a very long track record of copyright striking their gameplay footage and music on YouTube. With this YouTube copyright strike screen becoming a literal meme on the internet because of it. And this, again, is
X
basically
button.
for no personal
Select.
gain.
Circle
Let's Play
button.
channels
Back.
and Twitch streamers are great marketing for a game. Someone on stream or someone in a Let's Play saying that your game is great and is worth the purchase is a far better advertisement than any TV slot or pre-roll ad that Nintendo could possibly buy. Also, how the hell did Steve Harrington get into this Amiibo ad?
DK's saying this is gonna be bananas.
Why did they make Steve Harrington main Donkey Kong? Doesn't make any sense. Surely he'd main someone else, like maybe he'd main... And most companies know this, hence why nobody ever willingly copyright strikes their own free advertising. But not Nintendo. Nintendo loves to throw these strikes at people's channels just for a laugh. See, well, it's actually not for no personal gain. See, because Nintendo have this thing. They have the Nintendo Creators Program on YouTube, where you had to sign up to giving away a huge chunk of your ad revenue to Nintendo, just so that you could play their games on YouTube. Luckily, this was scrapped in 2018. But this was the explanation for why Nintendo was doing this. Because why take the free advertising if they can instead
X
take money
button.
directly out of
Select.
your
Circle
pockets while
button. Back.
simultaneously crushing their own brand image? In addition to copyright striking YouTube content, they also like to send cease and desist letters to fan games and mods for using their intellectual property. Many great Nintendo fan projects have been shut down just because of Nintendo brainlessly disliking any attempt at using their IP, even if it's not for profit. Like Mario Royale, an online Mario racing game that took the original Mario game and had you race against 74 other players online. Nintendo sent a cease and desist letter to this game, and they had to change their name to DMCA Royale and replace the Mario sprites with some other random dude. You might think that Nintendo did this so that they could make their own version of the game and actually make a profit off of it or something. But no, it was struck down on principle, such is the fate of every Nintendo fan project or mod ever made. The most egregious one, though, in my opinion, is Etika Joy-Cons. A popular Nintendo content creator called Etika passed away in 2019. So a fan designed and
X
made
button.
these Etika
Select.
Joy-Cons,
Circle button.
custom
Back.
controllers for the Nintendo Switch, and all of the profits went to raising money for a mental health charity called the JED Foundation. Nintendo sent a cease and desist letter to the guy who designed them, forcing him to stop all operation. What a cool company. Nintendo Switch Online in 2022 is worse than Xbox Live was in 2001. This service costs actual money. But hey, if the demand's so high and the service is so terrible, why don't they improve on it, you might ask? Well, it's simple. They just don't have to. Nintendo games are platform exclusive. You can only play Nintendo games on Nintendo platforms. So the online being god-awful just doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the amount of revenue they make from it. Because if you want to play Smash Ultimate Online, you have only one
X
option
button.
to do
Select.
so.
Circle
Their
button.
shitty
Back.
online service is the only way. Other consoles don't have this luxury. If Xbox Live is a very laggy, very unstable service, that will incentivize people to go play on PlayStation's online service instead. Because the overwhelming majority of games that people want to play exist on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, but not Nintendo games. Nintendo has no competition for their games. They have a monopoly on their own games, so they get away with doing the bare minimum for their online service, which cannot be said for other platforms out there. If they have a bad service, people will switch to their competitor. But what's the consumer meant to do when they have no competitor to switch to? Nothing. The answer's nothing. But these other companies are competitors, just indirectly. So let's just take a look at those companies for a second. So speaking of competitors, Why is all this such a problem? Because Nintendo has the legal right to do all of this stuff. It's their intellectual property and they can do with it as they please, right?
X
Why do we
button.
have the right
Select.
to be mad
Circle
about it?
button.
Well, the
Back.
simple answer is that Nintendo is an outlier. Pretty much every other games company out there, despite all the flaws that they might have, don't even do half of this stuff. Because they understand the value of their brand image and their public perception. Let's take a look at modding and fan games. Valve has the Steam Workshop, where users can submit custom content that can literally be added to the game if Valve deems it good enough. Valve obviously understands the value of modding, since some of their biggest IPs were born of fan games and mods. But there's others as well, like A Hat in Time having mod contests to stimulate the modding community, or how Devil Daggers has modding tools and tutorials hosted on their website, or how Sega literally hired fan modders and musicians to make an officially licensed Sonic game, Sonic Mania, a game that was better than almost every Sega-made Sonic game ever released. Most companies see the value in this stuff, because it's super important to let this stuff thrive, because it lets their communities thrive and get
X
excited
button.
about their
Select.
IPs.
Circle
Cracking
button.
down
Back.
on fan games is essentially cracking down on your most dedicated fans. There's zero personal gain in attacking these fan creations, but lots of personal gain in leaving them alone. But what about music? Well, as usual, indie devs reign supreme. Indie developers are very willing to sell their soundtracks as albums, both physically and digitally, as well as hosting them on streaming services. They also often allow the composer themselves to keep the rights to the music and sell the music on Bandcamp or host the music on YouTube and stuff like that. This allows indie dev composers to actually make a living, which they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Nintendo doesn't do any of this stuff, but honestly, a lot of AAA developers lag behind when it comes to respecting their video game music. When it comes to tournaments, the biggest esports in the world all have one thing in common: developer support. Valve helps fund its tournaments and its prize pools for Counter-Strike
X
and Dota,
button.
and Riot
Select.
Games
Circle
funds their
button.
Valorant
Back.
and League of Legends prize pools as well. Smash Melee is a huge esport with not only no support from Nintendo, but with them actively pushing against their success. So who knows how gargantuan the Melee scene could have been with the direct cooperation from Nintendo over the last 21 years. Tournaments are such a great way to generate excitement around a game, and once again, Nintendo seems to not even slightly understand the modern video game landscape and fails to adapt to it in yet another way. At least they might be finally changing their ways, though. There's also companies that try to keep their old catalogue of games as accessible as possible. Turns out, a much more effective way of combating piracy and emulation is making it way easier to just buy the game directly from you. Attacking ROM sites is the worst way to combat piracy, because attacking ROM sites doesn't make people not want to play your games. But if you just sell the games directly to the consumer, the desire to pirate them shrinks dramatically. And it probably goes without saying, but Nintendo striking YouTube videos
X
featuring
button.
music
Select.
or footage
Circle
from Nintendo
button.
games
Back.
is such a bad idea that it is almost comical that Nintendo did it for so long. They seem to have stopped ever since the Nintendo Creator Program died a deserving death, but the fact that it happened at all is just absolutely baffling. Because, like I said, the free advertisement that games get from having likable personalities praise their games is literally priceless. But Nintendo would much rather have the short-term revenue increase from this abomination than see the long-term benefits of a ton of free marketing and an unconditionally loved brand. Nintendo is a bad company that makes good games. They know how to make games, but they don't understand PR, marketing, brand image, software design, or consumer-friendly practice. Will Nintendo change for the better in the future? I don't know. Probably not. But if there is a silver lining to all this, Nintendo is showing that they have a capacity for change by actually sponsoring a Melee tournament for the first time in history. But only time will tell if they actually manage to fuck this up or not. Please do tell me in the comments any examples
X
of
button.
Nintendo's
Select.
that I
Circle
might have
button.
missed.
Back.
Also just going to flash this up on the screen. No reason why, don't worry about it, don't even pay. But here's hoping that one day Nintendo learns from its competitors. Maybe one day they'll stop viewing the video game industry like it's 1998. Thanks for watching.
X button, select, circle button, back.
Earlier entries in the series. The game is good, but when seen as part of a trilogy, its flaws are emphasized. But games come out to mixed reception all the time, so why is this controversial? The reason I think it is because there is very little agreement over why this is. When you look at the reviews and opinion pieces on Bayonetta 3, some critics might tear an aspect of the game to shreds, while others might say it's their favorite part. In this section, I'll be using a lot of negative examples from critics, as well as citing fan opinions, so if you're a die-hard Bayonetta 3 defender, this might cause an issue. It's also worth disclaiming that not all of these opinions I share, and I did enjoy 3. However, I'm also more than capable of seeing its flaws, of which there are quite a few. But before going into these critiques, it's worth saying that there is one aspect most reviewers and fans seem to agree on. There is of course a minority that disagrees, but almost everyone that has played Bayonetta 3 has sung the praises of the core gameplay. Playing as Bayonetta and summoning demons is just as fun as it was in previous games.
X button,
Certain aspects
select,
have been
circle
refined,
button,
like the new
back.
method of unlocking weapons being streamlined, the demon masquerade, and summoning adding variety to the gameplay formula. I could go deeper and deeper into praise of how Bayonetta plays in 3, however, everyone else has already done this. There are very few disagreements around the time spent controlling Bayonetta in combat, and that is a testament to its quality. But with everything other than fighting as Bayonetta, there are complaints. And one of the most substantial critiques is how often we are pulled away from the core gameplay. Compared to the previous entries in the trilogy, which have contained occasional gimmick levels, in 3, a substantial portion of the game is spent not playing as Bayonetta. As a concept, this could have paid off, but the execution got a very mixed response. Interspersed between chapters, there are 4 side levels where you play as Jean in side-scrolling stealth missions. I personally enjoyed these, since they were quick and a nice change of pace without any frustrating mechanics. However, I can understand why others hated these sections. All 4 of the levels are pretty similar, and if you just look at side by side of how different this plays compared to the rest of the game,
X
you
button,
can see why they weren't
select,
enjoyed
circle
by all.
button, back.
As I said, at least they were quick. What ended up taking most of the brunt is Viola. Compared to Jean's missions, which total to less than 30 minutes of gameplay, you play as serious newcomer Viola for 4 of the 14 chapters in Bayonetta 3. That's more than a quarter of the game's content. This wouldn't have been too much of an issue for me. While I don't love her design, her personality is refreshing when compared to Bayonetta and Jean. On top of this, her soundtrack is a standout for me that I never got tired of, but Mashable's Alex Perry puts it best.
There is just one big problem. Viola isn't very fun to play.
For a quarter of Bayonetta 3, instead of getting to enjoy the silky smooth controls of Bayonetta with her varied arsenal of weapons, you are stuck with Viola. By the end of her first level, I was tired of her katana, darts, and Cheshire summon, and this never changed. But worst of all, the game asks you to work against your instincts to learn to parry instead of dodging like Bayonetta to activate the powered up witch time. I wanted to like the Viola levels since I'd heard that they weren't well liked before playing.
X
But her
button,
gameplay made that a
select,
difficult
circle
task.
button, back.
On top of the 4 levels spent with Viola and the side missions with Jean, even Bayonetta's levels try to drag you out of her core combat-focused gameplay. While the gimmicky sections in previous games were more forgivable for being more sparse, having to deal with them in between Viola levels wore my patience thin. In a previous Bayonetta game, I would have put up with having to ride a giant hellhound for a verse, or spending some time shooting on the bird summon, and I could have coped better with the headache-inducing tarantula platforming section. But having these sections take away from core Bayonetta combat in her already abridged number of levels was grating, to say the least. But moving on from that slightly more personal rant, critics and fans also had a mixed reaction to the game's presentation and story. For the presentation, upon release, but even when looking at trailers, there was a lot of criticism of how the game looked, and it was clear that it was being held back by being stuck as a Switch exclusive. Isaiah Colbert commented,
Everyone's faces look like they were made out of sandpaper. It was hard not to notice that Bayonetta's model looked smoother and
X
shinier
button,
in the
select,
Bayonetta.
circle button, back.
Parish notes,
Bayonetta is too pretty, and the things she does with her hair, her fighting, and the demons she summons are all far too complex to be contained to 180p. Bayonetta is a woman who demands to be seen in all her glory, and the Switch doesn't do her justice.
it was not just the graphical quality of Bayonetta 3 that was critiqued, but some of the designs as well. The previous 2 Bayonetta games, especially the first, had such clear visual direction and inspiration, and this can be seen in the grotesquely detailed enemy designs featured in both. The more confused aesthetic of Bayonetta 3 is reflected in the homunculi enemies and how they pale in comparison to earlier offerings. Colbert calls them uninspired new enemies, Gelbart describes them as a generic aesthetic, and Summers directly compares them, saying they have a lack of personality or creativity compared to the previous games. It's even more of a shame when you see the creativity in some of the new demon designs in the game, which look amazing. But instead, you are stuck fighting such boring enemies throughout most of the story. And on the topic of the story, Out of every
X
aspect of
button.
Bayonetta
Select.
3, this
Circle
is the most
button.
widely
Back.
criticized. I struggled to find many defenders of free story, let alone passionate defenders, but when it came to those complaining about it, I am practically drowning in examples. Bayonetta has always been an action game primarily, but the story is a major aspect of the series, with plenty of cutscenes and narrative featured in every entry. Now, while neither 1 or 2 are tales for the ages, and they do have their critics, in comparison to 3 they are beloved stories. Clark makes a direct comparison, saying,
The story has never been particularly coherent in previous titles, but I at least found somewhat engaged in the first and second games.
And Summers also felt the incoherence, saying,
Platinum Games decided to regurgitate every lazy, no-stakes storytelling technique from the modern Disney MCU playbook to make a story where nothing of real consequence ever happened, and any major development can be explained away with a mundane multiverse.
Bayonetta 3 released at perhaps peak cultural oversaturation of the multiverse plot device, so I think people generally had a little less patience. Clark says Bayonetta feels wrong and Luca might as well be someone else entirely, and Summers also compares him to previous games, saying,
The characters previously had a bit more personal style and flair to their dialogue. They all feel like toned down, play-by-number versions of their previous selves.
Some of the critiques about characters feeling uncanny can be explained away by the multiverse aspect of the plot. That would also just mean that we're stuck with inferior characters for a whole game, which is an explanation, but not a very satisfying one. On the note of unsatisfying elements of Bayonetta 3, a lot of the story and character complaints are focused on the game's ending. It is going to get its own section, since the controversy derived from the ending is its own beast, and also that way, those who are looking to avoid spoilers can easily skip it. The critiques surrounding Bayonetta 3 are a source of controversy because all the feelings about the critiques were impassioned. Fans of Bayonetta have been waiting so long that they were willing to defend a lot,
X button.
while other
Select.
fans have been
Circle
waiting so
button.
long that they
Back.
just expected more from the game. And of course, these fans argued, as people on the internet with passionate opinions do. This led some reviewers on mainstream sites getting harassed, which is of course never a good thing, and it really threw me back to the Bayonetta defenders of 2010. And it also didn't help, as I mentioned, no one really agreed wholeheartedly on anything except the core gameplay. I mentioned that a lot of people hated the sections where you don't play as Bayonetta, but there are people out there who like the change of pace. While the graphics are panned by a lot of people, others think they're easier to follow than earlier games. Everyone who played Bayonetta 3 had a mixed bag of opinions, agreeing with some people on some things while wildly disagreeing with others. You might think that this is something which happens with all games, or just media in general, but I think Bayonetta 3 has been uniquely polarizing with just how much people can't seem to agree
X
on.
button. Select.
For me,
Circle
personally,
button.
I
Back.
enjoyed the core gameplay, hated the gimmick sections, liked the genre levels, got tired of how many Viola sections there were. I didn't notice that many graphical issues since it usually looked good in motion, but the lack of enemy variety was sad. And with the story, while I think the pacing of the levels was a bit too slow with how many collectibles were scattered, I didn't have too many issues with the story or the characters until the ending chapters. I don't think that I'm the only Bayonetta fan that hoped it would be the best in the series, and not to quote myself, but I can't help but mourn all of its wasted potential. And because of this, it ended up probably being my least favorite of the trilogy. The controversy with the mixed reception of Bayonetta 3 isn't as bombastic as a pre-release Helena Taylor drama, but it is a type of long-lasting controversy that will keep Bayonetta 3 as likely the most divisive game in the series amongst fans. If you're missing the drama though, the ending of 3 provided it. So, over the last few chapters of 3, it is revealed that Viola is a child of Bayonetta and Luca, showing that at some point
X
they had a
button.
romantic
Select.
relationship.
Circle
On top of
button.
this,
Back.
Bayonetta and Luca die in each other's arms after the final boss, then it is confirmed that Viola will be the next Bayonetta. Of course, there are multiverse shenanigans, but this was the ending for the Bayonetta we played as in Bayonetta 3. This ending shows that she has been in a straight relationship with Luca specifically, and how her story ended caused quite a bit of an uproar. But why is this controversial? People are straight all the time. The best place to start answering this is why people didn't think Bayonetta was straight in the first place. The crux of it is, a significant portion of Bayonetta fans saw the chemistry between Bayonetta and Jean as a lot more romantic and believed that this was coding for them in a relationship. This was further supported by the lack of any romantic tension between Luca and Bayonetta in the first 2 entries in the series. I've actually already covered a lot of reasons why people prefer Bayonetta and Jean before. Phillips also mentions Luca, who while shown to be attracted to Bayonetta with the pair often having potentially flirty banter, Bayonetta is not shown to reciprocate his feelings. The closest she gets is teasing him, but just as often she is shown to patronize and baby him. Rightfully
X
so,
button.
with him often
Select.
acting as the
Circle
inept
button.
comic relief.
Back.
Contrasting this with the mutual respect and almost domestic interactions between Bayonetta and Jean, it is obvious why many Sapphic gamers identify with Bayonetta. There are more specifics in that video, but it is clear that I'm not the only person who interpreted their relationship this way. As soon as this ending leaked, fans of this pairing flocked to social media to post evidence of the relationship between the two and share their distaste for the ending. There were also plenty of articles written about the ending ruining the character of Bayonetta and what she stood for. Because of the circumstances, this was the most public uprising of Bayonetta and Jean shippers, and this of course led to the biggest backlash to this as well. Just as angry as they were about Bayonetta and Luca ending up together, those who disagreed were just as angry that these people were suggesting that Bayonetta could ever be attracted to a woman. Two articles specifically, being the previously quoted article by Ash Parrish and an article by Maddie Myers, were both critical of Bayonetta 3, specifically the romantic choice with the ending. These articles were then subject to enough hate that Carey reported on it saying,
In the aftermath
X
of this
button,
post,
select,
August 2,
circle button,
I
back.
noticed the increasingly toxic Twitter conversations around the game get really nasty and reactive. Both reviewers and anyone who dared to post their viewpoint getting accused of not just being flat out wrong, but being silly or a joke, or worse of all, lacking knowledge. Even though Parrish and Myers say in their reviews they've been fans of Bayonetta for years, even though reviews and works of fiction aren't objective, just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean they're wrong or uninformed.
this level of conflict is obviously unfortunate, and a lot of people were harassed just for sharing a relatively harmless opinion, but a lot of the conflict was also misguided. While of course some people were upset that Bayonetta didn't end up with Jean, I think most fans were more upset that her relationship with Luca just came out of nowhere. Parrish specifically notes in their controversial article,
There are some incredible leaps of character development that we're supposed to just take on faith, while the game abandons 2 whole games worth of established motivations and relationships.
and Myers comments on the jump
X
in character
button,
importance,
select,
saying,
circle button,
Why
back.
he's suddenly such a big deal when previously he was little more than comic relief amounts to a big heteronormative shrug.
So, while there is obviously some upset about Bayonetta not being with Jean, it is clear that the frustration is more focused on her relationship with Luca materializing from nowhere. Again, this is something else that can be explained away by the multiverse argument, and that this isn't actually our Bayonetta. People have been pointing this out frequently. But in a game where this isn't made clear until the end, and that this Bayonetta acts almost identically to the Bayonetta from previous games, you can see why most fans act like this is all just the same Bayonetta. It also doesn't help that since the story isn't exactly the greatest, the audience wasn't in the most forgiving mood to accept unexplained character changes. The ironic thing is, I think that most people who are harassing fans upset with the straight ending probably don't like the ending either. Objectively, the complete lack of a substantial build-up makes the narrative payoff feel unearned. I think the reason there was such heated conflict is because this was a perfect excuse for the Bayonetta civil war.
X button, select,
Okay,
circle
that's
button,
dramatic,
back.
but there is a clear divide in the Bayonetta fanbase. I'm pretty familiar with groups who enjoy the same media but interpret it in completely different ways, and I recognize a lot of similarities with Bayonetta associated with anything gay. If you don't believe this, you can just look at anyone publicly associating Bayonetta with anything queer, and if there are enough comments, someone will disagree, saying something along the lines of, "What happened to Bayonetta fans?" So, since writing this, I actually found a thread on Reddit which perfectly encapsulated what I'm talking about, called Has Anyone Noticed the Influx of Bigoted Cishet Dude Bros in the Bayo fandom after Bayo 3's release? I was gonna look through it and see if I can find any good examples, because it's exactly what I'm talking about here. But the post has been taken down by the moderators because apparently it was becoming a cesspool, and I
X
can believe
button,
that
select,
based on
circle
what I've
button,
seen
back.
from looking at it. So I'm not going to go through it, but yeah, you just don't have to look hard to find examples of what I'm talking about. Both of these groups have been fans of Bayonetta since its inception, and both have been vocal parts of the fan base with some dominating conversation more than others at different times. Back to the point, the maybe perhaps exaggerated Bayonetta civil war, I think people being vocally upset that Bayonetta ended up with Luca was the perfect spark for these disagreeing Bayonetta fans to have such a public conflict. Now, I could just rehash a bunch of forum posts and threads of people arguing, but it would get repetitive fast, and you can already understand why they were upset with each other. But if for some reason the Sun felt it was necessary to cover the story, then you know it had to have gotten sufficiently ugly. There were some people questioning not just that Bayonetta could be a lesbian or bi, but that she could be a queer icon at all. And honestly, look at the material. If you don't get it, I don't
X
think you
button,
ever will.
select,
The straight
circle
Sonata
button, back.
Bayonetta controversy was messy, but it was also reactionary. And while it will be remembered, I don't think it will be as long-lasting as discussions surrounding the quality of Bayonetta 3 as a whole. However, I think it will occasionally be brought up when the topic of the ending arises. However, there is a final controversy that still hasn't fully unfolded. So it's probably presumptuous to call Cereza and the Lost Demon controversial already. It hasn't even been released. More the rumblings of the controversy to come. If you're unaware, on December 9th, 2022, only a little over a month since Bayonetta 3 released, a prequel titled Bayonetta Origins Cereza and the Lost Demon was announced, and immediately given the release date of March 17th, 2023. At the time of writing, the release is less than 2 months away and we still don't have much to go off, but enough to cause some conversation. Currently, we only have the announcement trailer and the roughly 10-minute demo that was hidden inside Bayonetta 3 as an Easter egg. It looks to be a fixed perspective storybook-style RPG with
X
a completely
button,
different gameplay
select,
style
circle
to a standard
button,
Bayonetta
back.
game. It also seems to have a much stronger focus on story. We have no idea how long the game will be, but from what I guess based on similar style games and from what other people have been saying, it will be around 8 to 12 hours. Could be longer or even shorter, but likely in that range. Nothing really wrong with this. It is coming out incredibly soon after Bayonetta 3, but if it's ready, it's ready. However, what immediately stood out to me and quite a few others is the cost of the game. Currently, in the UK, pre-orders for the game are at $49.99, down from $69.99, both of which seem incredibly steep for a game of this style. For comparison, this is exactly how much Bayonetta 3 cost when it launched. However, Bayonetta 3 was a sequel with years in development and a massive budget, and while Cereza and the Lost Demon could be a good game, it certainly doesn't look like it had the same amount of effort put into it as 3 did. When the trailer was released, I saw some reaction to the price, but I had to do some digging to find actual conversation about it. After making a Reddit post and looking at the comments on other posts which have a
X
similar
button,
premise, I can
select,
pretty
circle
confidently say
button,
that I have a
back.
grasp of the general reaction. There was a majority of people confused about the price, calling it too expensive, and of course there were some defenders saying we don't know enough about the game yet, which is fair. However, what surprised me more was that people were more worried about the actual content of the game. I had gotten so sidetracked by the exorbitant price that I hadn't even really considered the gameplay. So the main issue, which had originally completely gone over my head, is that the game is essentially only for Bayonetta fans, or also not for them at all. The game is hyper-focused on the lore of the Bayonetta series, specifically the lore which was set up in 3. Because of this, it is not going to be the best entry point to the series. A prequel should be a good entry point to the series, but this doesn't seem to be what Cereza and the Lost Demon is going for. But at the same time, the gameplay is a complete 180 from anything related to Bayonetta, and with Bayonetta being a game which most people enjoy for the core gameplay and the combat, changing that will of course alienate a massive majority of the fans who like this aspect of the series.
X
And to make
button,
it worse, a
select,
lot of
circle
fans of
button,
Bayonetta's
back.
story have been massively turned off after the story of 3 was received negatively. If the same writers who wrote the story of 3 are working on a story-focused game, why would you trust it? Considering all of these factors, you can see how the audience of the game keeps getting smaller and smaller. This is not me saying that no one will play it, but even in groups of Bayonetta fans, the people saying they will buy it on release are in the minority. It is much more common to see people saying that they will wait until it's discounted, watch a playthrough, or some just seem to ignore the game as a whole. And the worst part is, this could be a good game. The gameplay looks like it could be fun, but with the steep price, the changing gameplay genre, and the complete lack of trust fans have in the series writers, this game feels destined to not do amazingly. I think the timing could have been so much more fitting if the game was released before Bayonetta 3. It could have filled some time in the hiatus and hyped up fans for free instead of coming out when we have barely caught our breath. Cereza and the Lost Demon could have even addressed one of the biggest issues as free
X
by
button,
contextualizing some
select,
of the
circle
story before
button,
release.
back.
This could hypothetically make Free's story more cohesive, but it is now just a game that focuses on aspects set up by a very badly received narrative. As a Bayonetta fan, I'm hoping this is all proven wrong, and Cereza and the Lost Demon has a lot more depth than initially shown off, or that the pre-order price gets dropped, but with Nintendo publishing it, I doubt it. Everything I say here could and probably will change with another trailer, and this can serve as a time capsule of my hesitance to trust this game. But in the meantime, there's a range of cheaper RPGs to choose from, and these haven't been written by people who also wrote the story for Bayonetta 3. Because of this, I can see it being an uphill battle for Cereza and the Lost Demon to be successful. It took me a while to work out why the decisions Platinum are making with Bayonetta are frustrating me so much at the moment, but I eventually put my finger on it. Bayonetta is suffering from the impact of a premature reboot. Bayonetta 3 went in a completely different direction with the story having a lot of the game
X
dedicated
button,
to setting up
select,
a future
circle
reboot.
button, back.
This can be evidenced with Viola taking over at the end and the upcoming prequel looking like it will focus on the lore that is new with Bayonetta 3. But in my opinion, Bayonetta wasn't ready for a reboot. I think the best time for a reboot is when the series needs freshening up after it has become oversaturated, not halfway through the third entry of a series which has been spread over 13 long years. and with Cereza and the Lost Demon likely being our last time spent with the Bayonetta, the original, I think we are losing her far too soon. And perhaps the worst place to spring a reboot on fans is after 8 years of waiting in the middle of a badly executed story. It reminds me of when the Devil May Cry series was rebooted with DMC Devil May Cry in 2013, but since it shifted so much from the original game and was badly received, the series eventually reverted back with Devil May Cry 5 a few years later. The reboot was badly received, but at least people knew it was coming. But with a new Bayonetta timeline ambushing us when the trilogy hadn't even had a proper conclusion, it feels like Platinum jumped the gun.
X button.
I can't
Select.
help but feel
Circle
a bit
button.
guilty
Back.
for perpetuating a lot of negativity surrounding a game series I enjoy so much. But for a good game, Bayonetta 3 failed in a very unique way. While it is a reward for those who waited so long for it to release, the events surrounding it have alienated a massive portion of its audience as well. Whether you're a fan who got burned defending Helena Taylor, if you're unhappy with the divisive aspects of the game or upset about the ending, or just annoyed with the direction the franchise is going, there is a lot to be frustrated about. Hopefully, Cereza and the Lost Demon is good, but after that, it's a lot of question marks. Like, if we end up getting the newly rebooted Viola as Bayonetta, then this could be refreshing, but can she fill the massively charismatic heels Cereza has left empty? I can be hopeful, but I'm also not going to bet on it. But Bayonetta has been a divisive series for an ever-changing list of reasons since 2009, and honestly, at this point, I'd be disappointed if that changed. If you've made it this far, thank you, and if you like this video, I'd recommend going back and
X
watching my
button.
original
Select.
Bayonetta video.
Circle
I'm
button.
still
Back.
really happy with how it's turned out. It's just this, but before 2022, old Bayonetta drama, and it was really fun to look into, kind of like, there's a lot more to go over, so it's a bit more, I couldn't be as specific as I was as this one, because it was like 12 years worth of controversy, but it's still a fun video, and I still think it holds up. And if you like the style of content in general, subscribing would be amazing, because this is what I do. This is kind of stuff I've been posting for the last year. I don't always post video essays, but it's generally my default. This is kind of the stuff I enjoy making. But yeah, and thank you to Jay for doing the quote work. I love having someone else to do longer quotes in the videos, and Jay does it amazingly. I haven't had him in the past couple videos, because not many of them have had quotes, so it was fun to have him back in the videos. It was great. And thank you, Annie, for helping me with the script, because the first draft of this was an absolute mess and incoherent. So having her help me go through it and sort that out was great. But there's
X
just some
button.
things
Select.
point
Circle
out
button.
for the
Back.
outro, which I kind of missed in the original video, or like didn't find a way to fit in. But yeah, I promise I don't hate Bayonetta 3. I feel like my whole mixed reception section, I was like, I'm being far too negative. This is just too much negativity. And I tried to keep on fitting in. Oh, I like Bayonetta 3, but yeah, no, it's a good game, but obviously it's flawed. But the one thing which does piss me off about it the most, which I couldn't find a way to fit in, because it's so petty. In Bayonetta 1, her guns are red. The game's background is red. In Bayonetta 2, her guns are blue. Background of the game is blue. Game's case, that is. And in Bayonetta 3, I saw the reveal trailer. I saw her guns are purple. I was like, sick, we're going to have a purple background on the case. It's red again. Like, red and purple look awful together. It's just a really badly designed case compared to the first one. Like, the pose is cool, but it just doesn't fit with a red background, and I'm really annoyed. Like, were they scared of having a purple background? I don't know. I just recorded the outro, and I'm now collecting pictures for the outro. I am Mandela
X
affected.
button.
This whole
Select.
point
Circle
for myself,
button.
Bayonetta
Back.
1 doesn't have a red case. It does sometimes when you're looking at the collection of Bayonetta 1 and 2, but that outrage was completely misplaced. The original Bayonetta 1 case had a blue background, but then why did they switch to a red background? I think my anger's still justified. But yeah, I think people are going to switch up on Bayonetta 3, like with Pokemon Generations. Like, every time something new comes out, people will kind of be more forgiving for the last one, so they can hate on the new thing. But I don't know, maybe it won't happen as much as Bayonetta 3, because it has some inherent qualities which make it a bit more easy to dislike, but I'm not sure. Also, something which I didn't really find out until I was kind of solidifying the draft for this, and I couldn't find a way to fit it in properly. But Jennifer Hale did apologize for her kind of uninformed comments about autism. You can take that how you want, but I felt kind of bad completely ignoring that she did apologize, because like Helena Taylor hasn't said addressed any of her problematic comments, and it's like at least Jennifer Hale has. Also, very recently, I'm not sure if it was
X
revealed
button.
in the
Select.
art book,
Circle
but this
button.
happened around
Back.
the same time the Bayonetta 3 art book has like started being posted around. But Camilla has said that people have misinterpreted the ending of Bayonetta 3, and that Bayonetta Cereza is still alive somehow. I don't know how everyone misinterpreted it. Maybe if everyone misinterpreted it, he's the problem. Just saying. But yeah, so all of my comments about the series being rebooted could just be wrong. But yeah, just wanted to say that Kambia decided to pull that out of nowhere. But yeah, if you're still around, I would absolutely love any critical feedback you have, because I've been doing this for a year and I'm happy with like the growth I've made in a year. But there are some things I'm sure which I've missed, and like there's still lots of room I have to grow essentially. And if you have anything, you might be like, oh, it's obvious, I won't point that out, or I won't be too, don't want to be too harsh. Just say it in the comments. Obviously, if you like it, say that as well. But if there's anything I've missed out on or you think I can improve on, just say it, because I'd love to hear it. And yeah, thanks for sticking around.
X
By
button.
teasing, we can see her
Select. Circle
genuine care for
button.
Jean,
Back.
with her urging her to rest. This contrasts her relationship with Luca, who in this game is displayed as much less sexually interested in Bayonetta, and more as someone Bayonetta occasionally needs for backup, but still doesn't really take seriously. In her relationship with Luca, we see a friendship with each other exchanging favors, but with Jean, it is clear their relationship goes far deeper. This queer reading of the sequel, while not confirmed in any official capacity, definitely gave the game series a stronger queer following, perhaps redirecting a demographic who may have been critics of the first game. That brings us to the present. On the 23rd of September 2021, Nintendo finished their Nintendo Direct with a reveal of Bayonetta 3's first official trailer. Almost 4 years after its teaser announcement in December 2017, the biggest news the trailer showed us is that fans of the series can expect a 2022 release date, but with the trailer being almost 4 minutes long and featuring almost entirely what looks to be late-stage development gameplay, after the initial cinematic we can get a view of what the third installment will feel like.
X
Only on my
button.
second or third
Select.
viewing of
Circle
the trailer
button.
did I notice
Back.
why, even though the action seemed to look just like the Bayonetta gameplay fans had come to expect, excluding some kaiju-looking exceptions, the tone of the trailer felt different. When looking at how Bayonetta plays, it seems like the game has gotten rid of one of the series' biggest complaints, being Bayonetta's removal of clothing based on the strength of her attacks. Usually I wouldn't confirm a feature to be missing from a pre-release game, but the trailer climaxes with Bayonetta summoning one of her demons, something which usually leads to her having to get rid of her entire outfit. But in the multiple examples the trailer shows us, we never see this happen. Even in the normal combat, Bayonetta doesn't seem to lose any clothing with her stronger attacks, a staple of the previous two entries. The trailer's camera angles also don't seem as keen on objectifying Bayonetta from the footage we were shown. We get a few full body shots and Bayonetta still flirts with the camera during her monologue, but nothing to the degree of the previous games. At first I thought this might just be due to this being the first trailer showing off the gameplay, trying to stay tame. But when we're looking back at the first trailers for both of the previous entries, they both prominently feature Bayonetta's
X
stripping during
button.
her attacks,
Select.
as
Circle
well as the more
button.
sexually
Back.
charged cutscenes, which went on to be a defining feature of each game's cinematography. Because of this, I believe this trailer is introducing fans to a new portrayal of Bayonetta. While some fans have theorized this could just be censorship due to the game being featured in a Nintendo Direct, I don't see much validity in this, since the footage we see looks so refined just to be taken out in the final release. And also, the Direct was rated mature for the US stream and 18 in the UK, so partial nudity wouldn't have been too much of a stretch. I'm not yet in a position to conclude on why Platinum may have made this change to what used to be a series-defining feature, but I'm going to make a few tentative comments. For all I know, the previous theories may be correct, and all my statements on Bayonetta 3 could look stupid in mere weeks upon a follow-up trailer. While I've established that even with Bayonetta's portrayal in the past two installments didn't stop the games from gaining an audience in a wide variety of demographics, I still think the series has more potential for growth, and I think the creators know this as well. While I'm sure that a lot of people in the sources I cited like Bayonetta because of its more sexually
X
charged scenes
button.
and features,
Select.
I'm sure
Circle
there are
button.
also
Back.
just as many people who like the series in spite of this. Even those who have stated they feel empowered by Bayonetta and are big fans of the game have probably cringed at some of Platinum's more lewd choices in direction. Maybe it's just because I'm a chronic overthinker. If you can't tell from this whole mess, I don't know what will. But when it came to my own choice to play the series, it took a lot of mental gymnastics for me to convince myself that by doing so I'm not contributing to any negative systems, and to focus more on those who found the game empowering and the critical praise of the gameplay. And I did end up enjoying both games immensely. I loved the campy character of Bayonetta, and the gameplay felt amazing in the first and even better in the second. And while some of the more sexual scenes I saw as comedic and light-hearted performances, both games also featured some more gratuitous moments which I had to roll my eyes through. I don't think these moments ruined the experience to any degree and did nothing to discourage me to keep playing, but I theorize somewhere in the 7 years since Bayonetta 2, somewhere between Nintendo, Platinum, and Sega, there was a decision to make the series more accessible to a wider audience. Maybe to make a game which doesn't create
X
debates where
button.
there can be an
Select.
argument made
Circle
that you
button.
represent the
Back.
antithesis of good female representation. As I have said multiple times, and almost every critic of the series has too, the gameplay featured in the series is amazing and stands among the peak of the action genre. But among the best sellers of the genre, Bayonetta stands a little lower, and I think some CEOs have begun to realize this is because of how polarizing she is, or at least was. I don't think this decision is completely defined by corporate greed. This is the first game in the series made since the Me Too movement, and with the increased reports of women being harassed in every industry, including game development, in addition to some of Kamiya's comments from earlier, it is understandable why the team might want to sanitize their image a little. But it's interesting to theorize on the different factors which have led to the series to abandon some key features. Or maybe, as I said, this will all be disproven in the next trailer, and I'll be back to dedicate a few thousand words on where the series could go. That was my incredibly unabridged take on why Bayonetta has been such a controversial series.
X button,
Featuring
select,
a few
circle
hopefully relevant
button,
tangents
back.
along the way, as well as a look at what the future of the series may bring. Personally, as I said earlier, I love how the game plays and the characters it features, with Bayonetta's writing being a clear standout. However, I still really can't state a solid opinion on whether or not Bayonetta is empowering or demeaning. As a man, I know it isn't my place to dictate how people should feel on her representation as a woman, so I won't. But I will reiterate that each player or even onlooker onto the series can have a valid opinion on what they see. But as a gay fan of the series, I can definitely say I do resonate with a lot of the queer readings of the series. And if you couldn't tell from my analysis of the script of Bayonetta 2, the relationship between Bayonetta and Jean absolutely heightened my enjoyment of the second game. Overall, the strongest opinion I can state on Bayonetta is one that many critics shared, that being that she's a complicated character worth analysing. Maybe not to this degree, but I certainly enjoyed doing so. And that's it. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed listening to what I had to say. But before I get
X
into more
button,
general outro
select,
stuff, I
circle
have a few people
button,
I want to
back.
thank because this ended up being way more of a collaborative project than I thought it would be. I want to thank Shaq and Annie for helping me check through it because my grammar is kind of awful, but there is a written version and they helped it be a lot more legible. I want to thank Jay for doing the voiceover. He did a really good job. He was much more of a natural doing voiceover than I am. And yeah, no, I think his quotes sound really good in the video. I want to thank Seb for helping me with checking over the video once it was all done. And finally, I want to thank Botanautical for helping me, well, not helping me, doing the thumbnail. It's amazing. It's better than anything I could imagine. She really took the prompt I gave her, and I think it's amazing. I love the design of Bayonetta in 3 is definitely, I think, my favorite, and the way she did it is great. Yeah, I love it. But yeah, I don't want this to be too rambly, but if you have anything particular to say in response to this, please comment it. I'd be really interested to see what people have to say about it. Most
X
of the people
button,
who've seen
select,
this and haven't
circle
don't
button,
actually
back.
play the series, so it'd be nice if any fans of the series have anything particular to comment. Because even though I like the games enough to write about them, I haven't played them to death, so I'm sure people who played the games a lot more probably know some stuff which I missed out on, or people who were playing the games when they came out, especially back in 2009, probably know a lot more of the controversy, which, well, some more maybe obscure stuff. So yeah, if you have anything like that, please comment it. I'd love to see it. And also, this outro is being recorded the day of the upcoming direct. So the video was all ready to go, but I just thought, I was literally I stitched together the last video and I was just like, oh, I'll just check Twitter. And then the direct was there and I was like, yeah, I need to get it out. So yeah, hopefully this will be published before the direct. I'm not sure why I really need to get it out before the direct, but I was kind of I think there's a good chance we'll see Bayonetta in the direct. I mean, I'll know in a few hours. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more footage. I've making
X
this watch a
button,
trailer
select,
for free so
circle
much,
button,
and I just
back.
can't wait to see just more of the game, and I can't wait to play it. I really hope it doesn't get pushed back to next year because obviously it's been so long. But yeah, no, I really hope we see it today. And yeah, I have a few more videos planned, some stuff about maybe censorship and localization, maybe some stuff about Kingdom Hearts because the anniversary is coming up, maybe some stuff about subtext, but I kind of haven't actually started working on it yet. I just have a few ideas. So if any of that sounds interesting, stick around. And yeah, no, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for listening.
Puto francés, puto dama.
X button, select, circle button, back.
Ya. Con tanto puto drama. Descarga.
Press any button. Story, no alt make story, new game plus, stop no return, survive new run.
No return.
Standard run, start moderate. Pop surrounded. Support moderate. Very Ellie. Invent Dina. Progress Jesse. Dina. Progress
Dina?
Joel. Tommy. Progress Joel. Abby. Invent Lev. Yara. Mel. Many. Ellie. Inventory. Set you have selected.
Let's get out of here.
Jackson.
Is it?
Status. Available. Encounter type. Assault. Enemy faction. Shipping yacht Jackson. Shipping yacht Jackson. Status. Available. Encounter. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Assault. Clear each wave. Wave incoming. 20 seconds. Extra filter gallery. Gameplay mirror world. Slow motion. Bullet speed. Infinite ammo. On. Infinite crap on. Infinite mail on. Infinite listen mode range. One shot. Game X. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Crafting. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe requires. You now. Molotov. 2. Craftable.
See? Look.
Assault wave incoming. Wave 1 of 3. Enemies alive. 3. Sprinting it. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Equipped. 6. Rick. Molotov. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Cloud enemy reveal your position to enemies. Use listen mode. Hold R1 button to locate the supply cache between waves. Semi-auto pistol. Molotov. Brick. Health kit. Brick. Semi-auto brick. Molotov. 1. Craftable.
Que inicie la pelea.
Pistol ammo. Equipped. 5. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Equipped. 0. Ammo loaded. Infinite reserve. You need a health kit. Press directional button. Then hold X button to craft 1. Completed. Next wave in. 20. Crafting. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe requires you now. Semi health kit. 0. Crafting. Health kit. Craftable. Recipe requires you now have. Health kit. 1. Craftable. Semi-auto pistol. Molotov. 1. Craftable.
Puto hacen países para caer en esa trampa. Puto
X button. Select. Circle button. Back. 3. Pistol ammo. 3. Ammo loaded. Infinite reserve. Health kit. Semi-auto. Craft. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe you now. Supply cache. Wait, you are standing. Semi-auto pistol. Molotov. 1. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Crafting. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe you now have. 1. Molotov. You now have. 2. Molotov. Molotov. 2. Craftable. Encounter complete. Returning to hideout. 15 seconds. Crafting. Molotov. X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
She's too ashamed. Show her face that feels frustrated.
391. Total multiplier. 1. Point assault. Jackson. Rank. B. Score. 300. Encounter rewards. On returning to the hideout, be sure hideout, trading post. Visit the trading post to exchange. Gondola station. Houses. Office 1 at shipping yard. Status. Available. Halt. Clear each way. Wave incoming. 20 seconds. Recipe required. Unit upgrades. Persevere. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe requires. You now have 2 Molotov. Health kit. Craftable. Recipe required. Unit Molotov. Craftable. Recipe you now health kit. Craftable. Recipe required. You now have 2 health kit. You now have semi-auto pistol. Molotov. 3. When navigation assistance plays an error sound cue, you need to do something else to progress. Assault wave incoming. Wave 1 of semi-auto Molotov. 3. Molotov. 1. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. Equipped. 6. Ammo loaded. Instant reserve. X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
Alonso.
Repeatedly to escape the grapple. Semi-auto. Ammo loaded. Wave completed. Next wave in. 20. A supply cache of health kit. 3. Crafting. Molotov. Craftable. Recipe you now. Molotov. 1. Craftable. Wave 2 of 3. Enemies alive. 4.
La puta boluda.
X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
Perder mi tiempo.
Run fail. Shipping yard. Assault. Total shipping yard. Assault. Shipping yard. Rank D. Score 100. Challenges. New challenge bosses. Ellie. Boss defeat the arcade floater. Boss at Ellie. Abby. F complete 2 encounters with Ellie. L challenges. New route. Challenge leader 2 top leader. Chat new standard run. Custom lock. Very light. Experience Ellie. Invent. You have gameplay modifiers enabled that will result in no progress on. Yes. No. Yet. No. Yes. You have selected. Very light. With Ellie. Ellie. Inventory. You have gameplay modifier. You have selected. Very light. Ellie. If you have gameplay. You have selected.
Ah, mi puta gente.
X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Jackson. Logging camp. TV stick resort unknown. Resort TV logging camp. Hardware's office 1 Hardware Jackson. Options. Check X to quit to main met yet.
Ay, puta mierda.
No return. Survive story. New game plot. New load game. Check encounter. Check load. New game. New load. Check encounters. Check in Jackson. Seattle day. Set Jackson. Seattle day 1. Synagogue. Court. X. School. Capital. Moderate. Survive. Very lot. Start. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol. Molotov. Craft you now have. Molotov. 2. X button. Select. Circle button. Back. Rick. Craft Molotov. Option. Extras. Game commentary. Game one shot. Touch it. In book slow motion. Bullets. Infinite on. Infinite listen mode on. On. In bullet speed mode. Infinite. Press it. You now have 1. You now have 2. You Molotov 3. Rifle ammo equipped 3. Injured reserve. X button. Select. Circle button. Back.
No.
Option. Tutorial. Gameplay mode of infinite ammo. Infinite one shot. On. Infinite listen. One shot off. Infinite Sent bolt action rifle. Rick. Molotov 3.
Então, vamos tirar onde?
X button. Select. Circle button. Back. 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 X button, select, circle button, 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 back.